Greetings, and welcome back to Gastromancer's D20 Kitchen. For those of you that joined us last time, you got to hear a breakdown of the rules, but for those of you just joining us, here they are again. I have 20 household ingredients, things you find all over the place, every grocery store, and I randomly determine 5 of them to make a dish using a D20. If I roll a natural 20 during this, then it's a wild card, and I roll a D6 to determine the most difficult of those ingredients. So, here's the list for this time. Artichoke, ham, lettuce, chicken, tomato, steak, peas, cod, pears, hamburger, apples, pork, red wine, squash, salmon, eggs, potato, cream, flour, and of course the wild card. Now, to roll this week I will be using my very old black crystal casse gem dice. Had it since I was probably 12, served me very well. And to roll up close and personal so you can see the action, I will be using my digital camera. So let's get this started. Alright, let's roll this D20. First roll, nat 20. 19. 12. 11. 6. Alright, we have our rolls. Alright, now for the D6. Okay, so we have determined our 5 ingredients for this time. We have flour, apples, pork, beef, and the wild card, nuts. This is going to be a tricky one because we have both pork and beef, which I will be using in a single dish. Also the flour, could be weird, and apples. I'm going to have to think on this one. Okay, for the beef, I will be using a nice inch-thick chunk of top sirloin. For the pork, I'll be using a nice fatty piece of pork shoulder. I've got 2 Fuji apples, my bag of flour, and some jumbo unsalted cashews for the wild card. Alright, this dish is going to take some pre-production. So, with my top sirloin, what I'm going to do is leave this out on the counter. It's going to be there for about an hour or two. I want it to get to room temperature. I always cook my beef, especially when I'm using steak, at a nice room temperature. Trust me, it will help. Don't worry about germs or it's steak. It's fine for a few hours. Now, I'm going to mince up my pork shoulder and put it in a marinade. So, with our minced pork shoulder, you note I did not cut off any of the fat. You want to leave that on. You're going to get a lot of flavor out of that. I'm going to take that, let it sit in a marinade for a little while, which I'm going to compose of garlic-infused olive oil, some nice black pepper, a little pinch of fresh sage, give it a nice little toss for coverage. And then we're going to put that in the fridge. Okay, pork marinade is in the fridge. Now you're probably wondering, where am I going with this? Well, the next step should give it away, because we're going to be making bread. So, I have here a nice big bowl to which I will be adding whole wheat flour and some bread flour. And this is part of our pre-production. So, while I'm making the bread, it will help that steak sit out and get to room temperature. Now you'll note I'm not using any measuring spoons, measuring cups. I just don't work that way. Alright, here I have a regular coffee cup filled with warm, very warm tap water. To that, I will be adding some instant yeast. No real measurements here. I guess that's about a tablespoon and a half. Stir that up. Make sure to stir it a lot so that all the yeast is kind of dissolved in there and it doesn't get all clumpy on the sides. Now, I will simply be dumping that right on top of the flour that I've already put in there. I'll be adding to this mixture a little bit of salt, some olive oil, and plenty of rosemary. It's going to be some good bread. The thing I have here is my water and my bag of flour on the side because I will be adding both of them until it gets to be the proper consistency. I'm going to start my blending with a wooden spoon, kind of see where I'm at texture-wise. And you will actually note that this bread recipe that I use pretty much all the time is completely vegan. And now I start using my hands. Cover my hands up with flour, letting some residue fall down into the dough here. And begin churning. Just tossing it around, letting the outside get completely coated in flour so it doesn't work like super glue on your fingers. And then basically from here, I just add a little bit more flour, a little bit more water till it's right where I want it. Basically to the point where it's not going to stick to my fingers anymore. I can hold it in my hand. Alright, that's just about the kind of dough I'm looking for. So, I place it in the bottom of the same bowl, drizzle some olive oil over the top. Pretty decent amount. You want to coat the entire outside of your ball of dough in the bowl, so while it's rising it's not going to stick. That's going to hang out at the bottom of that bowl for about 40 minutes to an hour. I'm going to cover it with a nice little cloth here and let that sit to the side. Okay, so veggies cut. Apple minced up very fine, green and yellow onion cut into small pieces, about yay size to break up. And then I'm leaving a few rings of yellow onion to the side. I'm going to be using that for something else. Got a good heated pan and our marinating pork shoulder. We're going to give that a nice sear. Right, pork has some nice brown to it. Going to add our smaller cooked veggies, including the apple. Okay, pork, veggies all cooked down a little bit. Onions are getting nice and soft. And I'll transfer those into a preheated pan. Nice little pot I mean here. To this concoction, I will be adding some elderflower apple lime vinegar, some Bouillard Calvados, that's apple brandy, kind of a fancy name for it for those not in the know, some plain old white vinegar, just a bit, and some ground cumin. Make sure it's all submerged in that liquid. Lots of vinegar and brandy. Keep that at a medium heat, and if you like it, then you should have put a lid on it. In about half an hour, you'll have made a very tasty chutney. Steak's not ready to be cooked yet. You can feel it's getting to a kind of a room temperature. That's good. You might see a little brown coloration. No problem. To this, we add a decent amount of crushed rock salt, and that's still going to be sitting for another 15 minutes, half an hour. That salt's going to soak in and really tenderize it. You can scrape some off right before you cook it, but this is a good tip. Alright, we've taken our risen dough. I've put it onto a well-oiled pan, formed it into two nice kind of buns. To the top of this, I'm going to be applying some agave nectar, which is very much like honey, but it comes from a cactus, the agave plant. Give it a nice sweetness to the outside. A little olive oil. Then brush it on. And those are going into a preheated oven at 375. And they should be done just about the same time as the chutney. Alright. We have our pan at a very high heat. It is completely dry. That's very important. Taken my steak. It's now room temperature and salted. I put a little bit of olive oil and black pepper on the outside. That olive oil is going to help distribute the heat And I can't emphasize this enough, I am just searing the outsides, just gently. Now here's a kind of weird and tricky part. This is something that I personally do. Use your tongs and just kind of let it hit each of the corners that are all red. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm using the heat to seal in all the juices and flavor. Transfer it onto an oiled sheet of tin foil, and that's going to go in the oven with the bread. And once again, we play the waiting game. Alright, you've been good and you've let your steak and bread both sit for at least 10 minutes. Now we will deal with the steak portion first. Completely uncut, unprodded, unpoked. I will now slice it very thinly, cutting against the grain. Right, as you can see, our steak has a perfect blushing pink interior, making it just between medium and medium rare. Now for final assembly. Here we have one of the beautiful vegan bread rolls from the oven, still warm, still steaming inside, to which I will apply a coat of a very special balsamic cream glaze that I have made. Creamy and tangy and goes perfectly with the ingredients that we've used. To the top of that, I will apply some of the beautiful pink slices. To the top of that, I will apply some of our caramelized onions and mushrooms. To the top of that, I will apply some of our pork apple chutney. Here I have some 2-year-old aged white cheddar cheese. And last but not least, to the top of that, I will be applying some of our toasted cashews, which I have been frying in the steak pan since I took the bread and the meat out of the oven. And so, my friends, there you have it. A beautiful steak, pork apple chutney, aged white cheddar, sautéed onion and mushroom with toasted cashew sandwich on homemade vegan agave bread. Join us next week when we use our powers for the forces of evil once again. Thank you.